If you're looking for one small thing that you can do in your school that will have a profound impact on your culture, this might be my favorite take this year. Welcome to Toddle School Leaders Project. On today's episode of the podcast, I was super excited to welcome Peter DiDonato. He's the Chief Innovation Officer at the SCH Academy. And my guys, this is an episode you are not going to want to miss. Pete and his team have started creating microgrants for teachers and non-teaching staff. It started to develop AI curriculum in their schools, but it's expanded into so much more. They've got teaching teams and innovators across the school making a difference and seeing that what they do matters. I can't believe just the entrepreneurial spirit that is imbued within the entire culture of this school. And it's such a beautiful story dating all the way back to 1932. So join me, jump in, and let's hear about this transformative process at SCH Academy. Peter, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I'm just so excited to talk to you and have you here.
Yeah, thank you, Cindy. I'm so glad to have connected with you.
I'd love for you to kind of set the stage for our audience. Who are you and what's kind of your work history? What are you most passionate about?
Yeah, it's a funny history, right? I think we all could say that when you've been in the field for more than a few years, for sure. I originally came to Springside School in the mid 90s. I was in graduate school at the time, getting a master's degree in instructional technology. And I was certain that I was on track for the business side of the world. And I started working with a lot of teachers in graduate school. And interestingly enough, one of them knew of a tech need that this school for girls that I had never heard of, Springside School, was looking to hire someone. And I had been, as a graduate assistant, the person who kind of learned technology on the fly, working in a language lab. So I had become like the de facto person. Which is so funny because some of my earliest stories with tech in college, I remember the first time I actually typed a paper on Microsoft Word. I had just gotten back from a baseball game. I played baseball in college, and we're located in Philadelphia, and we were coming back from New York. So it was like 11:30 at night.
Woof.
I was in the computer lab for about 45 minutes trying to figure out how to launch Word. And
Oh.
I was just too embarrassed to ask. And finally, there was a comp sci student who knew what was going on. And she said, "Can someone please show him how to open Word?" Right. So I got in, typed my paper. It's so embarrassing. Right. But I always remember that because when we're working with a teacher, I could never do their job. They're just so amazing with students and their patience and their emotional intelligence, and being able to connect with 16 different kids in 16 different ways is amazing. So I think that's something our tech team tries to bake into our ethos, is to really understand that we're all coming at this with different expertise, and together we're making something really special. But on our own, there was no technology per se 1,000 years ago when people were learning. So this is a newer part of education. And we're not really the core piece of it. The core piece of it is the student-teacher relationship. And we want to make sure we're really supporting that. But I came to work here in, mid 90s and thought I'd be here for a couple of years. And I got put on this great team with an amazing head of school, very visionary, some other great colleagues, and it was exciting. We were doing complex things, solving complex problems, and before you know it, we had established a reputation for girls in technology, girls in science, leadership, and we started talking about innovation and entrepreneurship well before it was a buzzword, or it was kind of in vogue to talk about having that as part of your school, because we really had evolved this thinking of yes and. So someone had an idea. We always tried to say yes, and how can we make that idea better? Fast forward to 2024, we're now SCH Academy and have been for over 10 years. We've launched the Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership. It's really become one of our vanguard programs at the school.
Mm.
something that all our kids go through, and then they have options to elect in at the upper grades once they're through their capstone in 10th. Um, and I think we use the merger as an opportunity to say yes and like, what else can we do? What is the future of education? And at that time, we also created a Department of Engineering and Robotics.
Hmm.
Um, and engineering and robotics is also one of those things that started at the boys' school with an idea of this would be really fun. Kids would like it. We always joke that it started in a closet because there was no spaces, there were no offices. There was like tape on the hallways in the corner. And after school, the kids would get together and work on initially building Legos, but now they're in the first robotics program. And we have a science building with almost the whole first floor dedicated to engineering and robotics. I mean, one of the projects they're doing right now, it's a multi-year project. They're actually building an airplane that's going to
Wow.
fly. And it's just, to me, I look at it as it's so incredible. And it's one of those ideas that it came from a couple of faculty members who were running the tech team at CHA at Chestnut Hill Academy, and then it's just flourished since we've been one school, and we have um, more. I believe we have 11 robotics teams right now, pre-K through 12, and this is a team that finished first in the world in 2018.
Mm.
Something we're so proud of, not just because it's fun to hang a banner in the robotics lab, kind of like your championship banner, like you would for a football team or a soccer team, but because it really brings out the best in a certain type of student who loves to be creative, who loves to tinker, um, and it's provided a great pathway for those kids to go on in higher ed and really look at engineering careers, careers in AI, blockchain, finance, perhaps. But there's so many great team building skills that you learn there. There's so many amazing technical skills that you learn there. So it's just been really cool. And
The School Leaders Project is brought to you by Toddle, your all-in-one teaching and learning platform made for teachers and by teachers. In this episode, Pete talks a lot about the power of AI to save time. And at Toddle, our big, hairy, audacious goal is to save you 10 hours per week as a teacher. That's everything from lesson planning to writing reports, and soon to come, our student-facing AI tutors. So check it out at toddleapp.com and book yourself a demo today. So much to unpack in what you said there. But I think what really stood out to me across all these different initiatives in your schools is that they're so human-centered and they're so based on valuing the strengths and passions as they emerge. It's like, it seems to me like you get the right leader or the right staff member in the door, and you just provide the space and the opportunity just to let them shine, which is just a cool approach to this like entrepreneurial spirit. Can you talk a little bit more about this kind of yes and culture? And is it something that is intentionally cultivated, or do you think it's just kind of happened over the years?
yeah, that's a great question. I do think that we're much more intentional about it now than we were in the beginning. I think in the beginning, there was a group of people that were really excited to do new things, that there was a lot of trust between faculty, staff, administration, that we were all trying to figure out the future together. And at the
Hmm.
same time, doing that in a way that is best for students, but very supportive of faculty. Because at the end of the day, that's something, the faculty are taking care of the students. The administration really needs to take care of the faculty. There's no doubt about that. And I think that what started happening is it didn't matter where the good ideas came from. It could be a teacher, it could have been a department chair, it could have been someone on the technology team, it could have been a division head, it could have been a head of school. And
Mm.
then what we would all do is try and make our ideas better by, sort of ripping them apart a little bit and asking the tough questions, but in the vein of being better for the kids and better for faculty. And I think it takes a group that is willing to check their ego to do that.
Yeah.
So if you're like, every great idea has to come from me, I'm the oracle, like it just doesn't work in that kind of environment. You have to be humble. You have to understand that there's so much expertise here. There's so many good ideas. And when there is one, you get behind it and help bring it to fruition. And I think over time, what has happened is now we're intentionally saying in meetings, like for the last 4 or 5 years or whatever it is, um, about like, hey, we're thinking about bringing a speaker here to talk about, the mental health and anxiety for students. And it's like, okay, yes. And can we have some workshops for parents? Can we have them meet with faculty as well as students? And it's like, okay, well, how can we create a series out of this? Like, who might be the second person we would bring? Can we tie a PD day into this? And then before you know it, you have a single idea that has turned into a through line for the whole year for essentially the whole community.
So cool. Just like this iterative curiosity and passion cycle
Hmm.
that you just continue to kind of breathe life into. Because I think so many times what I see in schools is it's like, oh yeah, we want to hear your ideas and we want you to be part of it. But then nothing ever comes of it. There's never anything that comes to fruition.
Hmm.
And one thing I love about your school is that you really walk the walk and you show teachers that their innovation is valued, and not just teachers, but the entire staff. So could you talk about your microgrants program a bit?
Yes, absolutely. So one of our last, I guess, 18 months or so, we went through a process to really double down on what our key strategic pillars are going forward. And one of those five that we settled on is strategic and intentionally embedded innovation,
Awesome.
which makes me very, very happy because this is a process that went through employees, students, parents, alumni, and for them to be telling us back that innovation and creativity is
Yes.
important just makes us, so affirm that this is what we're doing. They see it, they value it, they recognize it. It's really, you have to be really intentional to incorporate this into your work because there's always a security patch that needs to be installed. There's always the piece of the network that needs working on, or there's always certain lesson plans that you're trying to get through. So we have to be intentional and say, actually, this is going to be this slice of our work, and it's not negotiable.
Awesome.
Um,
Kind of like a
so
equals 20% time almost.
Yes, and believe it or not, we incorporated that. We changed it a little bit. We called it 10% time about 10, 15 years ago. And the idea was you get 10% of your time, which is essentially was 4 hours a week, to work on a passion project that didn't have really many parameters other than it had to make life better for someone at the school. And we had all kinds of wild things that came out of that, including um, selling technology that we used to essentially e-waste, and then using those funds to using the money that we would get to help fund families who were on financial aid and didn't have technology. And again, this is many years ago before our one-to-one. But since then, a lot of the systems we have at the school were brought up from those ideas. Like, hey, in 2000, I can remember in 2006, like having lunch with group of people and saying like, yeah, there's this thing called Gmail, and it's really has all these great features, way better than what we were using at the time. And I was like, okay, why don't we set up a pilot and get some people using it? And lo and behold, we've been on the Google Workspace platform essentially since '07. But there's been many of those things that have happened along the way. And recently, with this recommitment in our strategic planning, our thought was, okay, great. Intentionally embedded innovation is something that we're going to lean on. How do we get everyone involved in this?
Yeah.
So we kind of started with our AI task force last year to put a group together, one that was really studying what are the right tools for kids, what are the right tools for adults, what are the right tools for non-teaching staff, what are the student literacies that we need to focus on, And then ultimately, we had another group that really wanted to focus on what is the philosophy of the school? What is the existential issues that we have to grapple with? And is it okay for us to use AI? All those kind of layered and onion type conversations. So we kind of started there.
Okay.
And as the school year ended, we were like, let's offer a grant program to pay faculty to develop AI curriculum. So we did that in the summer, and we ended that with a summit that was attended by leaders from Drexel and University of Pennsylvania, who gave us feedback about what they're seeing in higher ed, what they believe our kids need to bring when they come there, and trying to help shape us as we're going through this, because AI is such an evolving topic.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and I'm
and
curious because they were creating curriculum and it went under review. Were there a lot of major ahas that came out of that work? And do you have like a solid working curriculum now that everyone's using?
So not necessarily that everyone's using, because this was an opt-in grant program that you
Okay.
applied for. But some of the examples that I'd love to talk about is, one, we had an upper school world languages teacher teaches Spanish, who essentially created a personal tutor for every student. So they have a chat bot that is programmed in such a way through the prompting that it will not give answers, but it will guide kids throughout her curriculum. It's really incredible. And what I love seeing is when we presented this, there are other language teachers who never would have been in for AI initially, who are like, wow, this is really powerful. And by the way, it won't help the kid cheat, because that's kind of the elephant in the room when we
Yeah.
talk about AI in schools. And we have multiple teachers now in world languages who are deploying
These
this with their kids, which is just
people.
amazing for that teacher. Her name is Corinne Dion, and
I know
just
her.
a shout out for her for sure. And
Well,
um,
it mirrors Ethan Mollick in his book. He says that the odds of a tech company or a big company being able to design a specific AI tool for you that's going to meet all
mhm,
of your needs is not that likely. But you, as the expert creating those tools, are able to develop something that like is deeply functional and deeply works for your situation. So, what a gorgeous example of that for other teachers to see of, hey, what happens when we step back from fear and step into what might we do with this tool and are
yeah.
given the space to do that.
Yeah, I think that's a great analogy to use. And there are other teachers who decided to take the summer to create pre-K-12 guardrails and guidelines for teachers. Because we
Awesome.
have a number of teachers who are like, I sort of don't know what to do here, so I'm just not going to allow it. And we've adopted this. I'm oversimplifying, but it's kind of like a red, yellow, green light system, where
Right.
red, you are not allowed to use it. Yellow, you are, but only for certain things. And green, it's like, yes, you go, as long as you're citing your work properly, you can use it. And teachers have adapted, and our stance has been, we're not forcing, we're not mandating, we're letting this be a grassroots initiative, but we
Cool.
are putting support behind it, and we're not holding anyone accountable for not doing it. Our feeling is that will evolve over time, and I'd like the Gartner consulting group would talk about their hype cycle, and right now AI is at the peak of the hype cycle, and everyone's talking about it. And probably in 6 months we'll be talking about it less, but
Yeah.
we'll start to see more adoption, which we're excited about. And coming into the school year, we decided to launch another microgrant um, process that did not have to involve tech.
Cool.
So it was like new ways of thinking, new ways of teaching, new ways of working, process improvements. And we haven't notified the group yet, so I can't say too much. The 18th of November, we're announcing, but we've got some really cool things coming down the pike. Like, we have someone in our HR department who wants to totally revamp how we onboard employees. So for us, we're
Cool.
kind of a larger school. We have 240 full-time employees and like another 160 part-time between coaches and subs and maternity leave and whatever it might be. And sometimes even going through the paperwork, but like we don't really think of that as an innovation, like, oh, paperwork, it's part of the process. But if we could take all that time and automate it and have it
Mm.
go through an AI system that says, hey, Cindy, we got your clearances. That's great. We still need your fingerprints. That's your checklist. That's your to-do list. Or we need your signed letter of agreement, or whatever it may be. And it takes you off from having to use the phone and calling each other, because let's be honest, most people don't want to talk on the phone today.
Right.
Um,
And it's
and
time.
it's major time, right? That's our biggest factor here. And I think our biggest hope for AI on the non-teaching part of the
Mhm.
school is that it's going to help give us back time. If that's 45 minutes a week, if it's a day, if it's a couple hours a week, that would be huge for people. Even if you're getting 4 hours back a week, but you're only working 3 of those 4 hours, and that other hour or hour and a half, you have time to just think deeply about the things you never can be strategic on, or maybe go get a cup of coffee in the cafeteria and talk with someone from another department who you don't normally get to see.
Mm.
And we're hoping AI will help with a feeling of burnout that I think is pervasive in education right now.
Well, we know that that's true, right? That
Yeah.
teachers are burnt out, that we just keep adding more into their plate. So I think for all of us, we're hoping to see AI as a solution for that. But what I think is special about your school is that you're prioritizing it and you're making it happen. It's one thing to say, oh, well, we hope AI saves time. But by creating programs like the grant program and asking people, both academic teaching staff and non academic staff, how might this practically save you time and how can we support that? Like, gorgeous. And I'm curious, how much are you spending on grants, if you don't mind sharing? Like, is it a big financial burden, or is this something that you think a lot of schools could probably pull off in their budgets as they have them now?
Yes, I think it's definitely something a lot of schools can pull off. So we're saying the micro grants that we're awarding will be between $250 and 2,500 at the high end.
Okay.
And that would include resources, software, hardware. In one case, we're building an outdoor science facility for our early childhood program. It's like blueberry trees, little bit of landscaping work that either we'll do in-house or we'll outsource. And then what we're also doing is taking a small amount of money and awarding an honorarium to the faculty or staff that get these grants, to
Cool.
say that, here's a few $100.
For your time.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And we have a small innovation fund through an extremely generous donor, but it's not a huge amount. And for the school to take on and say, hey, if we're gonna use $20,000 this year for directed innovation, in the large overall budget of a school with 1,200 kids, that's a very manageable number.
Well, and to ignite that passion, like you can't put a price tag on that because inspired teachers and inspired staff inspire students. And I can just only imagine, have you had any students submit for the microgrant program, or is that something you're open to in the future?
It's definitely something we're open to in the future. Now, we do have our students in 10th grade, they go through a capstone class in our Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership. And that's the time where they are putting forth an idea for a business. Some of them are often starting a business.
Mm.
Sometimes it's a social justice initiative. Sometimes it's a for-profit business. Sometimes it's a babysitting service. Sometimes it's providing clothes for the homeless. One of our projects a few years ago was a student was connecting college kids with high school seniors so that they
Cute.
could talk directly to the college students to get a feel of what the vibe was on the campus, kind of bypassing the traditional college counseling process. And that was a huge win. I mean, kids are still using some of those technologies now. But what we are looking to do is in the spring to have an innovation event where our students who go through the capstone for 10th grade and our employees who were awarded a microgrant we'll all be at like a dinner together, showcasing their ideas and projects. And, everyone gets 5 minutes to sort of, talk about what you did. And we're also hoping to create something called Futurecast, which will be our version of a podcast where everyone who goes through the grant process will be interviewed. We can share it out, and hopefully inspire other people here and at other schools.
Well, how cool is that too? Because it's one of those things that you think about inbound marketing for your school, and how better do you put out there what your value proposition is as a school than by sharing these stories of your teachers and your students who are choosing to become entrepreneurs and choosing to innovate in their communities. Like it's just, you can see how it's a process that just feeds itself and would just get bigger and bigger over time. Um, yeah, I think if I could implement one thing in a school this year, I think this would be it. This microgrant program, I think, is the coolest thing I've heard about.
Well, awesome.
Nitty gritties. Are teachers presenting basically, like, are you giving them a business planning template? Is there a certain amount of information they've got to provide to you to get the grants? Or how are you organizing it to make it fair and equitable and organized?
Sure. So essentially, we have an application that describes what the grant is, and there's a few questions that people have to fill out, a description. They have to do a budget. They have to talk about what the impact will be. Is it sustainable beyond 1 year? So we get
Cool.
those grants, and we had just over 20 people submit grants, which is a little bit less than 10% of our full-time population. We were very happy. We were thinking 15 would be a great number, but to
Right.
get 21 was
Right.
fantastic. And then we have Ed Glassman, who is the executive director of the Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership, and someone that I collaborate with a lot because he's really doing the innovation in the classroom piece on the day-to-day basis. So he and I are co-leading that. And then we have our director of development, our head of upper school, and our director of DEIB on the committee to go through the grants and to say, okay,
Beautiful.
this one doesn't meet our criteria. We're not going to fund it. This one has the kernel of an idea. Let's go back to that person, try and develop it further. And hey, yes, this one's ready to go right now. So we can approve that. And our plan is to announce them on the 18th of November, just a few days from when we're recording this, and then hopefully have this become an annual part of what we do and who we are.
And then are they working with you consistently as the chief innovation officer? Like, do they have almost a monthly sync with you, or are you kind of
Mm-hmm.
their proposal manager, or is it more self-guided?
Yes. Also, great logistical question. So part of how we're going to make this happen is we'll have an announcement, have a kickoff meeting, and then we will meet in person monthly. That's our plan. So
Yay.
that
As a whole
and
group.
yes, and the thought of that is by being together, um, it will help improve everybody's process, everybody's project. So some people might hear from our faculty member who is working with their students to build a CNC device rather than buy one. So if you buy one, it might be $3,000, but lo and behold, you could get the materials and build a woodcutter, essentially design a woodcutter for like $1,000. So what a great project for students to work on. So we'll have someone like that sitting next to someone who works in HR who's trying to improve this onboarding process with the use of AI, next to the early childhood folks who are building this outdoor nature center, et cetera, down the line. And but we'll also be able to help each other. Like, hey, I'm stuck on this, or I might need tech to lean in a little bit to help me, or maybe they need a connection with someone else at the school. And our hope is that that group will either apply again next year or become mentors in the program as we scaffold this forward.
How cool. I mean, so many people talk about how important it is for teachers to feel this sense of agency because you can't lead inquiry and you can't lead entrepreneurial and agentic experiences
Mm-hmm.
if you are just being top down directed at. And what a cool way to actually make this happen in schools. And in a way I've never seen before, especially with a non-academic piece mixed in there. Just how did you come up with this idea? Where did it come from?
I think it's really started from us just having a group of people here at the same time who had the same mindset of I don't want to say disrupt education because I don't want to
That's what
be,
you're doing.
over the top about it, but there are ways that we could reinvent pieces of it that would make it better and more relevant for both teachers and students and be our differentiator in a lot of ways. We're in a super competitive market. There are more schools per square mile, I think, in the Philadelphia area than perhaps anywhere in the country. Maybe there's one other area that's a little more dense than us. Um, so for us to have something that we believe in that is part of our ethos and sets us apart is also, I think, something that's been of interest to us to maintain. And we see and hear from our young alums all the time when
Mm,
they go. I mean, in general, independent schools are amazing places. If you're lucky enough to be in an independent school, you in a lot of areas already have a step ahead of other people when you get to college or university. And for us, we also want to prepare our kids not just for higher ed, but for the world, and to
right,
have them ready to like, hey, I have an idea. I know how to start a business. I did that in 10th grade, right? I'm
right.
going to go and do that now.
And I've edited a podcast and I've worked with a woodcutter and
Yeah.
it's such beautiful transferable skills that, like you're saying, aren't just saying, okay, college is the most important thing. You can go and you can pass a test. It's beyond college. When you have that idea, you have so much agency, so much capacity to put forth your ideas into the world. And you've had incredible models all along the way showing you the power of passion and the power of action to make a difference in the community. Just do you have a
Yeah.
good marketing team? Because this should like, are you all over social media and just kind of sharing this process and sharing this journey?
At SCH Academy for anyone who wants to follow. Yes, our marketing, our Marcoms team, they're amazing. They're always publicizing and showing what we do. And for me, one of the most gratifying things about this is I started here in 1996. I'm kind of outing myself a little bit,
You
and
look
it's
great.
2024, and we've had a number of heads of school. I mean, originally the person who really was the gasoline on the fire for us was Priscilla Sands, our head. Um, but we also had Frank Steele from Chestnut Hill Academy.
Mm,
And then when they had both moved on, we had Mark Seeger, we had Steve Drugan, we have Delvin Dinkins now. And so this has lasted over the
legacy.
time. It's part of our through line at this point of particularly who we are as a merged school, who we are as SCH Academy. Yes, it's about knowing the whole student. Yes, it's about the communication with parents, it's about finding that unique piece for each kid, but it's also an innovative mindset. And that's a key part of who we are and who our kids are as they leave here. And that's super exciting. That will get you up in the morning for sure.
Just so identity affirming that your school has just such a strong sense of values, purpose, and identity that isn't just written on a brochure somewhere or written over the door. You're living and breathing it and putting thought and money behind the things that you value and care about. Very, very cool.
Awesome.
I'm like a fangirl for your school. Um, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you because early on, like when we were first doing this, you told a story about a 1932 graduate. So I think it's one thing to say there's a through line of entrepreneurial endeavors, but this story for me really like rang home of how this has been part of your school for quite a while. Might you share that story with us?
Yes, and I don't remember if it exactly was 1932. It was somewhere right in that ballpark. We had
Wild.
alums here for a reunion, and there's so many things I love about this story. One of them, how it starts, is we have an English teacher in the upper school who wanted to resurrect the Campus Lantern. The Campus Lantern was a school newspaper, actually from the boys' school pre-merger, and when we merged, we kind of lost some of those uniquely um, identifiable things because, well, we have two newspapers. What's the name going to be? Are we going to create a new name? And it took us some time to work things out, and
Mm.
certain things kind of fell by the wayside. So here we are, 13 years, 12 years after the merger. And she said, I really would like to resurrect the campus lantern. I think we have citizen journalists here, we have artists, we have people who want to do the technical work, but she needed money to get started. She needed a few $100s to print a newspaper. And she worked through her department chair, head of school, and our CFO. And our CFO, who, often you think of a chief financial officer as someone who's, really frugal or counting the money. And
The
our
no guy.
CFO, yeah, he exactly a no guy. And our CFO is a yes guy, Frank Aloise. He was like, sure, this is a great idea. How can
Yeah.
we yes and right? So he supported her with a few $100s to get this newspaper printed, and it was an instant success at the school. And it was kind of, pushing against all barriers and making us grapple with the conversations about, can students manage our social media? Can they post on our social media? Do we trust them to do that? They're important conversations to have. So last year, we're sort of in the throes of the first year of this paper getting resurrected, and we have our alumni weekend, and we have, to be polite, elderly alums who are here that day, and they're sitting in on one of Jenny Gellhorn's classes. Shout out to Jenny. And at the end of the class, they hear the story about how there's a newspaper again. And they said, we actually were part of the first newspaper in 1930 something. And she says, wait a minute, what is your name? So the lady says, my name's PT Donato, or whatever our alum's name was. She says, I have that newspaper in my classroom. She goes and gets the original newspaper with an article written by this alum. And it was such a magic moment of the past with the future and the present all coming in at the same time. And since then, like, the Campus Lantern has taken off in such a huge way. There's so many kids involved. We're actually starting a middle school newspaper. It's one of our innovation grants. Microgrants is to start a newspaper in middle school. And then there's an idea for this to cascade into lower school as well.
Oh,
It was just, I kind of have goosebumps telling that story, because what are the chances that you're going to get an alum who originally started that newspaper in a classroom with the teacher who's just resurrected it? It was really incredible.
I don't often get tears on this show. And it's my second time hearing that story. And it's such a powerful reminder of why we do what we do as educators, because
Hmm.
it's one thing to say, oh, I'm going to do a robotics lab, or I'm going to do a newspaper. But what we don't realize sometimes, or what it's so easy to get lost in the day-to-day minutia, is that your passion might spark this flame for somebody that changes their life, that they're going to remember forever. And that's what we take away from school. That's what kids remember about school, are these amazing experiences that we curate. And just, I don't know, it really brings everything full
Yeah.
circle for me.
Yeah, well, I think that's it. Like, this is all about creating those touch points, creating experiences for kids. Like, sure, the day-to-day classes are important and there's a lot of magic that happens in there, but it's like, when there's that opportunity, can we understand that it's happening and really help support either the teacher or student so that it becomes this potentially life-changing experience?
Oh, I love it. Lighting sparks all over the place. Just, yeah, really gorgeous. Pete, I feel like I could talk to you all day about this. I'm just so thankful for the work that you're doing at your school, and genuinely so inspired by the work that you're doing at your school. And I just hope that everybody hears this episode and takes a risk on these grants, because it just seems like truly culture defining and life changing in so many ways.
Yeah, thank you, Cindy. And I agree. It's been great meeting you and talking about this. Even just talking to you, it's helped giving us new ideas of things we can do. So I'm happy for this to be the beginning of an ongoing relationship. Thank you.
Yay.